Manchester isn't trying to be London, and that's exactly why it works. It's a city built on graft, confidence, and not asking for approval. And that mindset turns out to be incredibly good for business. Today on Business Without BS, we're unpacking Manchester's business culture, why it punches so far above its weight, and what founders can learn from building outside the capital with our friend of the show, Adam Pope. Adam has done some incredible things and built a legal business from the ground up in Manchester called Spencer Churchill Solicitors. He's definitely been doing it his own way and built a significant business up there in Bolton. So today we really want to have a little bit of a feel and a thought about Manchester, about not about London, basically. You know, I think underneath it, we were just saying, I think as a country, we should be glad that we got London, because otherwise we'd probably be a bit screwed, because it really is one of the best cities and most incredible cities in the whole planet. So that's great. But I think there's obviously this London-centric nature, therefore, because it's so unusual for a country to have such a dominant major city and the next city to be on a scale sort of a tenth of the size. Now, people argue whether it's Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, the next biggest city, but certainly in Adam's view, and I think I agree, you know, Manchester is something special. And why? Let's start there. Why is Manchester special?
I think it's special because it goes back to its industrial heritage and all of the great innovations that came out of that era. And I think that's then transcended itself now to which is very much a technology hub. So a lot of investment has gone on into the technology space in Manchester and investment space as well. So I think it's very much the second best city outside of London from a technology and investment point of view. And I think when you travel, no matter where it is you go, America, Europe, and anywhere else, you always get asked, so where are you from? From Manchester. And it's like, oh yeah, Manchester United or Manchester City. So outside of London, I think when you speak to people, most people have heard of Manchester because of the football.
It's got to be one of the strongest brands in the world.
Exactly. That's it. So that's most people's reference point outside of the UK of Manchester. It's the football, which is great. And then on the back of that, like I said, you've got really good universities there, really good innovation coming out of the universities. New product graphene was another one. And like I said, the technology space is absolutely booming there. They've had a number of unicorns come out of the space, a load of investment. And I just think, the property market, which I think is a really good indicator as to whether a city is thriving or not, they're still building in a massive way. You look at it and go, how can there be the need for this level of development? But there is, because they're filling the places, whether it's a residential or commercial. And I think that's the biggest sign. And such is the case now, is they're not just building in the city centre, they're building outside of that. So say it's 15, 20 years ago, Manchester city centre would have looked something like this. But because of the expansion outside of the city, which has sort of been grouped together now, it's very much sort of like the history of London, how it started off. Manchester ended up the exact same way. So I think it's not just a case of Manchester city centre, it's Greater Manchester. There's a lot of great businesses that are on the fringes of the city centre. And I think, unlike London, it's the Greater Manchester area.
And it keeps growing out, does it?
Yeah.
I'm so ignorant. I mean, you've got Manchester, Bolton's a town within Manchester where you're based.
Yeah, you've got Bolton, Bury, Wigan, Stockport. And
it's one continuous urban mass now.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then if you go up there, as I did not long ago, and took the train about and stuff, there's a short train ride west to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of greenery between that, but not much.
Not much, yeah.
And then the other direction is Leeds.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And these are three really of the most dominant cities in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the power. What do they call the Northern Powerhouse? That's a lot of the concept to say. Well, it's not as big as London, but if you lump all these things together, But Manchester has always had this such strong identity. To be from Manchester, I mean, I was even joking to myself when I say I come from London, people often say Manchester United, you know, but it shows how strong the brand is. They're not saying Tottenham Hotspur or something, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
But how do you, as someone from Manchester, perceive, you know, you're British, but you're from Manchester. What's the culture of being from Manchester? Can you put a finger on that in how you think differently?
I think it just goes back to, I think, two things. One, the Industrial Revolution, and two, the weather. So typically people think that if you're from the Northwest, the North, Manchester, you're gritty, sort of like friendly, down to earth. I think that's most people's perceptions of, like, when I've had friends come and visit or visit Manchester or visit me, they'll say, aren't the people friendly in Manchester? And the reference point is London, because often is the case in London, people just keep themselves to themselves, they'll walk by. Whereas in Manchester, it's very different. It's kind of like, how you doing, mate? That's the sort of conversation.
I always think that's about size of cities. Once a city becomes big, it's like, people said to me years ago, people in London, I'm friendly. I'm like, they're not if you actually manage to stop them.
Yeah.
They're just worried you're a thief.
Yeah.
And they're busy trying to get to where they're going, which everywhere takes an hour to get to.
Yeah.
So you don't have fucking time to stop for 10 minutes for a chat. You know, you're not in Manchester where you can get places in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, well, listen, man, I'm on the clock here.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, I think London's become so international too.
And I think Manchester's known for its amazing music culture as well, which is a massive contributor. So I think the overall culture. So you've got massive football, two of the biggest clubs in the world. Whenever anybody thinks about football in the UK, like you said, most people's reference point is either of the Manchester clubs. And then on top of that, you've got the music scene.
Factory Records. I used to know Tony.
Yeah,
Hacienda.
Oasis,
Why? Let's go back
Stone
to the
Roses.
start. I mean, not to give you, not to ask you to become a history lecturer for us today, but the Industrial Revolution started in Manchester. Is that the principle?
Yeah.
I mean, do you happen to know if you told me what, you know, because even that is so innovative globally.
Yeah.
You know, I know there was a lot to do with a lot of the stuff in this country was like that we could do the canals and then move stuff around. Yeah. So the canal network had a huge impact that we could suddenly move
huge
stuff.
amount of mills. So the amount of mills in the Northwest because of all the cotton trading, so Bolton in particular. So funnily enough, the book that I've co-authored with the guy that...
Yeah, Adam's brought a lovely book today, How to Survive and Thrive.
So the book that I co-authored is with the founder of Reebok,
Joe Foster.
Yeah, and so we're both from Bolton, and Bolton, its history was born out of the cotton industry. So it provided a lot of the cotton milling services for the country. And then funnily enough, that's how Joe got started in footwear, because his family was involved in that industry. And it's just sort of went from there. So if you drive around the streets of Bolton, Manchester, generally around the Northwest, you'll see a tremendous amount of mills. And obviously in 2026, a lot of those have been converted into apartments and offices now. Some of which have maintained, but the vast majority of them have now changed its purpose over the years.
It always feels like there's a fearlessness with people from Manchester. I mean, each town obviously has its own sort of microculture, as it were. You know, there's the Yorkshire thing, there's the Liverpool thing, there's the, you know, I don't know what the London thing is now because it's so international. But, you know, people from Manchester always get this sense of sort of, they're not afraid. There's a bit more of a swagger or a confidence.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. That's it. 100. There's a huge confidence, and you walk through the streets of Manchester, and you'll see a lot of stereotypical Mancunians.
Give me the stereotypical. Yeah. They got the swagger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. It's sort of inbred.
You're proud. It's a pride. It's a pride of this sort of this city that's sort of because. Not to offend Manchester, which I'm sure I will anyway, but it's not like it's, you go to Liverpool, you come out of the station, they've got that huge fucking building, it's by the water, it's sort of beautiful. Manchester's not a city that you're like blown away by its beauty or anything, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not a sort of, it's a bit like when you compare, if you've ever been to Australia, Melbourne and Sydney, you know, Melbourne's where all the culture and the vibe is, but it's not beautiful like Sydney, you know?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think when you walk around the streets of Manchester, they're very much visually all of the recent developments over the past 20 years in terms of the skyscrapers, the high rises. As far as office building goes, got some amazing looking office buildings, but you're quite right. There isn't necessarily the Liver building, which is the one that you mentioned in Liverpool. There isn't necessarily that, not until you go further out. But the good thing about Manchester, it's not a huge city in terms of actual area. When you add in the sort of suburbs, which now make Greater Manchester, it becomes much bigger. But what's great is within 15 to 20 minutes, you're in the rural areas. You can be in the countryside. So I think you've got the best of both worlds, where a lot of people tend to commute into Manchester because they want to work into it. They've got an amazing food scene, it's like tremendous amount of variety, so many fantastic restaurants, some really nice bars and clubs. They've just opened up a Soho Manchester there now. So I think what you've got Manchester is you've got that cool, it's always been a cool vibe place, but you've also having a lot of wealth there now in terms of young wealth.
I know. So I remember it wasn't that long ago when I went. And the other thing, the moment you enter Manchester, and maybe this is an unfair way to judge wealth, but the amount of fancy Land Rovers and fancy cars.
Yeah.
You can often judge a place. It's like judge a street by its cars.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, there's so many nice cars in Manchester,
so where that will typically come from, you've got Cheshire, which is about 30 minutes away.
Okay.
So footballer territory. And then what they'll then do is then traveling to Manchester and, like I say, the food scene, the bar scene, that sort of thing. And obviously everybody else tends to follow that. So over recent years with the boom of influencers, a lot of influencers that you'll see on TV and so on these days have based themselves out of Manchester. And again, I think it's because of the vibe and the culture. I think I've travelled extensively around the world, around the country, and my sort of humble opinion in 2026, Manchester is one of the few cities that when you look at it and you look at the people in it, it still stereotypically looks like the UK. Whereas I feel London, you can see it's very multicultural. Birmingham not still, very multicultural. Liverpool probably retained.
That's a very interesting comment, actually. Yeah. And again, it's a sensitive area, but yeah, it's true. Birmingham obviously has a huge Asian population and stuff, very multicultural.
Yeah.
And Manchester, in a way, when you're saying that, you're saying it's sort of, perhaps it's got a more traditional, and this, look, you've got to take this the right way, and I can make some jokes about it. But for instance, in London, it's become so international, people forget what the British culture is. So, for instance, when we say cheers, people say, you've got to look in the eyes. And I've been pointing out in this town for about 15 years to people, no, you fucking don't. Not in this country. That's from Germany. That's from Australia. And there's a little example that Londoners now think that when you say cheers, you're supposed to look in each other's eyes. And I'm like, no, it's not. We don't do that. In
Manchester, when you say cheers, you're supposed to throw it on somebody's head.
Well, there we go. That sounds far more British. I love the swagger, just the sense of like, and that's important in business, isn't it? Having some guts. Fuck it, we can do it, kind of attitude, isn't it?
That's it. Manchester symbolised by the worker bee. That's the sort of thing that you see from sort of like from a souvenir point of view. So you see different references to that across the city, whether it be sculptures,
I didn't even know this. The worker bee is a literal bee, like work hard kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it goes back to its heritage.
Graft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think I could be wrong in saying this, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Manchester was known as like the work engine of the UK at one point. I think it goes back to that industrial heritage. I think it was meant to be like the engine room.
Yeah. What's the phrase? The engine of the world, or whatever it was called. Yeah. The workshop of the world.
Basically, yeah, exactly.
And actually, that culture will be right, because the original Industrial Revolution, which basically started up there, was fucking hard work. I mean, it was brutal. If you look at, until they brought in employment law and employment rights, and it's a bit like everything in life. We don't want to live in a world where people are losing arms in looms and there's 5-year-old children collecting things. Yeah. All of that initial employment stuff came out of the UK because we invented these machines and all this stuff kicked off, and we just need labor. It was just going bananas, basically. But people work hard.
And I think a lot of this is economics as well, Andy, because I think, if you look at the cost of living in London now, and and I love London. It's literally my favorite city in the world. I've traveled to New York and this, that, and the other. I love London. But the economics are significant for most people. And although there is a lot on offer, from a social and entertainment point of view, I think what attracts people to Manchester is an amazing nightclub, night scene rather, a music scene. Even, to this day, the heritage of that. Don't get me wrong, the cost of living in Manchester significantly increased over the past few years. It doesn't rival London, obviously, but it's significantly more than it used to be. And that's why you're finding that developments are going on further afield outside of the city centre now, because people want to live in the vicinity of Manchester. But what that allows them to do is live in the vicinity in a much more affordable way, as opposed to paying some of the rents that there are in living in some of the city centre skyscrapers.
Let's talk about business and starting up in Manchester.
Yeah.
Whether I'm from overseas or I'm here or wherever, and I'm thinking of starting a business. I think there's often a lot to be said to not go and start in London for all the things that's one of the main reasons, pure cost of employment and everything.
Yeah.
But when you're in Manchester, what do you find difficult?
I think there's a really good talent pool. I think the universities are knocking out some great things, and that's a big draw for people. I think, the Manchester unis are some of the most
just
popular.
one, or is there two universities?
There's three, sorry, yeah. So you've got Salford, Manchester Uni and Manchester Met.
Right.
Manchester Uni has been knocking out some really good science stuff for the number of years, world-leading research and innovations. So I think, again, contributing or building on to the city's heritage. But in terms of recruiting, it's weird because I am on the fringe of Manchester and Bolton, literally 15 minutes. As a firm, we pay more at every level, at every role.
In Bolton?
Yeah. We pay more because if you want the best people, you just assume that you have to pay what the market rate for those people are. But yet, such is the draw of the city, people are willing, and they do, get paid less than, say, what we offer, because it's in the city and they want to work in the city.
I see. You have to pay more to draw people out to Bolton. And Bolton was its own separate town.
Yeah.
But is it urban sprawled? There's no real gap, urban, but there's a sort of two city centres, is there?
Exactly. So it's its own town. Like I say, it's 15 minutes or so away. But because it doesn't have everything that we've spoken about, people are willing to travel and commute, and a lot of the time get paid less than what some of the companies on the fringes are willing to pay. And it's just because of the draw of the city.
Wow. And it sounds so funny to a Londoner when everywhere takes an hour to get to. The idea that 15 minutes journey time would make any difference.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
This is like the 15 on the train is like, 9 miles, 10 miles or something like that. That's the difference, isn't it? So, yeah, and I think, and obviously one of the big benefits of living on the fringes of Manchester is the cost of living, the cost of buying houses and renting. But people are often willing to travel and get paid less because of the draw of the city. They just want to work in Manchester.
So this is interesting. So there's a sort of attitude of work. There's a confidence as it were. There's these different little centers. There's a sort of, it's almost, do they, in a way, you're almost saying they almost compete. There's a little bit of competition perhaps between the areas. Is there a sense of competition?
So the way it works, I'm not sure if you've heard of a guy called Andy Burnham. He's our Greater Manchester
Mayor. He's all over the news because he might take over the
He's like
list.
the Sadiq Khan of Greater Manchester, basically. He's not necessarily well liked.
Is he not?
No.
Oh, really? I thought he'd be loved the way he wants to take over the Labour Party.
No. So this is how it goes. So way back when, I forget the date, they create this Northern Powerhouse. And what was meant to happen was we was meant to get our own budgets and our own powers to do as we wish. They did that, I think, for a year or 3. And then they got taken back off us in terms of the budget. Yeah. So then it sort of got quickly swept under the rug. And then what happened was the newest sort of version, from what I understand, was it's now not the Northern Powerhouse, because it was meant to incorporate Leeds and Liverpool and so on and so forth. It was very much, actually, we're going to direct the funding to Greater Manchester, of which Andy Burnham sits across the top of it. And the rest is somewhat been left to rot. So we was meant to be part of the Northern Powerhouse because Bolton's probably, I think it's the biggest town in the northwest, 250,000 residents.
Yeah, it's a big town.
Yeah. And we was meant to be getting some of that funding, which we never have. So I was quite close to the Bolton Council at one time. So I got to know the ins and outs of things. And a lot of projects that had been earmarked then got shelved because the funding that we were promised or provisioned never materialised. So it meant that a lot of our own projects either got mothballed completely or took an extra 5 to 7 years to actually be delivered, because what the council had to do, or Bolton Council had to do, is go overseas and get grants and this and that, the other. So another big impact was HS2 being scrapped.
Oh, don't. I live right near it.
Yeah.
And there was a moment when I was going to be able to get to France, get up north, get everywhere. And now, what's the joke? I can get to Birmingham 20 minutes quicker. I could catch the earlier train, you know.
It's because of the overrun on the budget. So I know something quite close to this. So as a side note, I've just got involved with a vegetation management business. We've just taken a stake, me and my business partner.
In a vegetation
management. So what they do is they have contracts on network rail and highways. Prior to us getting involved with them, they were a subcontractor to HS2. So you probably know the stats, but HS2 was earmarked to cost something like 7 billion.
Yeah, it's 4 times now.
Yeah,
something.
Exactly. And when you hear about what they were doing, this contract I've just got involved in, they were just literally making up the prices, taking the piss with what they were charging or wanting to charge. And somebody would just go, yeah, that's fine. And then bear in mind, they were somewhat at the bottom of the chain. So not a main contractor or a tier 1 contractor. And what was happening was at every step, everybody was doing the exact same thing.
Wow.
Just basically, let's see what we can get away with.
Well, the fuck who was running it? That's crazy.
Well, apparently what was also going on is the brown envelopes as well.
Yeah. I like to think in our country with limited corruption, but being I come from Slough, which is, it was 150 million, it went bust, and it's like, where's all the money gone? And people are like, well, exactly.
Yeah. So I think, so then what's obviously, understandably, it got mothballed, the HS2 got mothballed, didn't it?
So you're telling me in this country, the infrastructure wasn't even that we're shit at infrastructure. It was everybody had their hand in the till. Yeah. They ran out of money and they just had to cut it down.
Correct.
That's tragic for the country, man. Is. And that's actually not the fault. Amazing, I would say. That's not even the fault of the people who were nicking the money, because they were getting away with what they can get away with. That's business on some level, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the people who are managing it said, fuck off. The budget's X. Exactly. You want to do it or not?
That's exactly it. But that's not what was going on. What everybody saw was it was a free-for-all.
God.
And by which point, by the time they tried to get it under control, it was too late. I think they looked at it and gone, what have we spent? How far have we got with it? What's it going to cost to finish it? Forget it.
Do you think it would have mattered, that whole argument? I mean, not we want to do too much politics, but the going left to right was the argument. Shouldn't you have a high speed between Liverpool to Leeds and connect up those towns more? Rather than having to travel into London and travel out again.
Do you know what I think it is? I think a lot of these projects are vanity projects. And I think it gets votes. It's like, as a side note, something that will be the irritation of a lot of people in the Northwest. They did a smart motorway, right? Completely pointless. Completely pointless. They don't even use it.
Smart motorway people is where they have lanes that they can turn on and off, don't they?
And they don't. It's completely pointless.
What's the aim of them? The aim is that you can... I've never really understood what's the point.
It costs billions, right? It shut the motorways down for years and years. So then we realised it didn't work, or it wasn't safe, actually. So they then tried to introduce a little while ago this a little bit like London have got the congestion charge, the Greater Manchester equivalent. And they tried it twice now, and both times it's like, no, we're not having it. The point of saying all those examples are the money desperately needs to be spent in local services, not these big vanity projects, which the local service would make all of the difference. Not a smart motorway, not a HS2 between Leeds and Liverpool, because to be frank, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
It's an hour.
Yeah. That's that joke about if you want to get to, because all we're going to get to is we can get 20, it's going to be 20 minutes quicker to get to Birmingham. And the comedian's like, well, if you want to get there 20 minutes quicker, catch the earlier train.
That's exactly it.
But I did hear someone say, and I thought I really agreed with this. He said, what we should do, the real distance that would matter is London to Glasgow, London to Edinburgh. And obviously Scotland and England
Yeah.
and the whole fracture.
Yeah.
You could change the country if you could say to someone, listen, you can get from Glasgow to London on a train in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Suddenly you'd be like, well, that's useful.
Do you know what my fear was when they introduced the idea of the HS2 is what I wouldn't want to happen, and I could foresee it happening. If you could shorten the time taken to get from Manchester to London, what are people going to do? I'm going to go and work in London. I'll live in Manchester. I'll get a London wage, pay a Manchester accommodation. We would have lost a huge talent pool.
God, that's such a good point.
Yeah. We would have lost a huge talent pool, without a doubt. Because why wouldn't somebody, in my world, well, your world as well, solicitors. So in the Northwest, a newly qualified solicitor could look forward to, depending on the firm and the area of law in which they work, anything from 50k to about 80k. The last time and I don't tend to look for these things, but the last time I stumbled across it, one of the big Magic Circle firms was offering 120k.
Oh, great. The American firms is crazy. Yeah.
Newly qualified.
I mean, you'll be, for everyone listening to this thing, I'm going to get a job that you will work like a dog. You will be vomiting at night. They will have you on deals working till 1 a.m.
Stress by the time
it's horrendous. But you can go earn 150, 200 grand, whatever.
And if your mortgage or rent, whatever it might be in Wigan or Chorley or Bury or wherever it might be, Manchester itself, why wouldn't that be attractive? It would be. No, for what? Who wouldn't travel an hour and a half a day, 3 hours a day round trip for perhaps 2 to 3 times their existing salary?
How well's Manchester Airport connected now? Because I see it pop up when I'm traveling internationally a lot now. I'm like, you're flying direct to Manchester.
Yeah.
It's pretty good now, I think.
Really good, Really good.
You can go most places in Europe, America.
Direct.
Yeah.
Without having to commute.
Because that is so important. Modern business is so global.
Yeah.
When you compare London to other cities around the world and stuff, and you're saying, you could go here, it's like, there's 5 airports.
Yeah.
It's one of the most connected cities in the world. You know, you need that. And you do see that from Manchester.
Yeah.
I mean, when I travel, I definitely see that name on the board a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's good.
I know we don't want to go political here, and I don't either, because it frustrates the life out of me. But if you look at the money that's been spent on the NHS disaster, COVID, HS2, there's a list of them. What was the
the list goes on?
What was the deficit in Rachel Reeves' most recent budget she was peddling? Was it 30 million or something like that?
20 billion, yeah.
Well, it's like, surely rather than pissing that money down the toilet, money would have been better spent plugging that hole. I mean, I don't really believe that hole exists anyway, but
it's sad. Story. I think the narrative was just driven by this simple narrative. So people sing as well, tax people more. And we can get into all of that. But, if you don't know the stat, it's a really important one. Tax the rich. It's like 70 to 90% of rich people are self-made entrepreneurs. So tax the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And anyway, by the way, those entrepreneurs pay some of the highest tax in the world. So I think they're doing their bit. But the sad bit is they don't look at efficiency when they fuck up the motorway to do a smart motorway. It's like my frustration in London is you've got, 150 companies who can dig up the road.
Yeah.
So you're permanently stuck in a fucking traffic jam.
Yeah.
Like the roads, we've got 2 roads to get to the school, which is 5 minutes away, but it takes me and my wife half an hour because they're always digging up one of the 2 roads. Like, that's the sort of shit they need to do. They need to say, right, that's it. You got to get yourselves organized. You can't just dig up the road. If John's digging up the road, you better talk to Sid and do it together.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
Done. And then we're going to leave them alone because efficiency matters. They don't look at efficiency, do they?
Yeah.
And look at the question in Manchester. How do we make Manchester more efficient? It probably might be like, expand the airport.
Yeah.
Go for the airport.
Yeah.
Make sure the roads we've got work and they're clear. And we can move around.
Yeah.
It's the building, planning permission.
Yeah.
Make planning permission easier. Get the thing. To be fair, because Alex Dupledge, who came on the podcast, is a friend of the show. Pick up Alex. She's Rachel Reeves' entrepreneurial advisor. And she's wicked. And she might even be from Bolton. I'm trying to remember where she's from. She's certainly from up north. But anyway, she's an absolute cracker. But her point is, look, they're not getting it all right. They're in a government that doesn't understand business, basically. But Rachel's really trying to do her best in a very difficult. You can imagine the unions, everyone around her, but they really are trying to deregulate. Try and get the planning going. Try and get some of that. So some of that is happening to some extent. I'm trying to be positive, as it were. But go on, please.
Just as I've been trying to rack my brains for the phrase I've been looking for to sort of sum all of this up.
Yeah. Great.
So I think when I mentioned about the vanity projects, I think a lot of the Powerhouse stuff and the subsequent funding was because Andy Burnham and others made this case of anybody outside of London is just forgotten about. And I think that's the perfect phrase, forgotten about. And that was the sort of narrative that was then pushed to try and empower us with our own budgets and powers, that we can make our own decisions. Because I think we felt like, no, we might not contribute the same GDP as London does, but we certainly contribute. Why should we feel like we just get the dregs of whatever's on offer? London gets all of the shiny stuff, all of the investment, all of the money, all of the accolades. What about the rest of us? And I think that was the point of it all.
Do you know what's, because I sit in London and partners, I have the pleasure of sitting at these tables with some important people now and then. It was very bad, actually, the Northern Powerhouse narrative, because it made an us and them. The trouble with it saying we got to do more for the North is it created this tension between London, rather than saying we got to look after everywhere, or it created this. Yeah, you're right. It's not fair. It deepened the problem. So they're trying to shift the narrative. But the other bit that's really interesting is if you look at why do Crossrail, is when they say, right, we're going to spend 20 billion to build this train line. Well, let's do it in Manchester. And they'll say, well, how much will we make out of that? Well, we'll get about 20 billion back after 10 years. Well, how much we make in London? Well, we'll get 100 billion. Because it's this, and this has been a problem, by the way, for hundreds of years. Martin Wolf, the FT's lead economist who we had on the show, was brilliant about this, but just said, look, this isn't a new problem. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Your problem is you keep doubling down on this thing because it works, and it becomes really hard to spend money up north and do it. But I think we all want to live in a country. I personally want to live in a country where we're not resenting rich people or poor people or people from the north or people from the south. We're not resenting London. But what you're talking about is really important. You need devolution. It works. Give people the budgets. Have someone good. I'm surprised. I thought people loved Andy Burnham and he'd done a great, which then didn't make sense to me because he's a Labour leader and I'm thinking, well, he's not going to know about business. And you and me are business people. So we're like, let a businessman run Manchester. Yeah. Okay, let's say I'm going to set up my business. And I'm going to set up in Manchester. So there's a great culture. It's cheaper. There's great talent there. It's very internationally connected. It's near a great international city. I mean, what is it? I don't know.
2
You came
hours.
today, 2 hours on the train. What would you say, when you're scaling outside of London, what's important? What helps you scale, or what's the important things you got to think of when you're not being in a mega city, but being in a very good city? I'm going to come and try and build my business in Manchester. How do I think about it? Do I think about Liverpool and Leeds and I think about it as a whole area? Do I focus on Manchester?
I think because of the close proximity of Leeds and Liverpool and other cities around it, I don't think you necessarily have to sort of separate them out, because a lot of people will travel and commute. And I think, you'll know this yourself. I think it's been tapered down a little bit since COVID and working from home or working flexibly. So I think that's had a massive impact on talent and resourcing talent. So you don't necessarily have to choose between Liverpool and Manchester. There might be reasons for that depending on what type of business it is and what it is you're looking to do. But I know a lot of people that live in Liverpool or Merseyside and they will travel in. I know people...
and vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. Yeah. It is very connected in that way.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. And does the culture shift? Like, let's ask a more cultural question. If what would kill trust up there? What is important in that area of the world about building trust and building respect and relationships? People know each other, I guess.
Yeah.
So they don't bullshit.
It's just what I said before. It's that down to earth, gritty, normal. I know that there's a lot of affluent areas in the Northwest, but I think people would stereotypically say Manchester's a working class type. When people think Manchester, it's like working class. There's a lot of really nice places in Manchester. There's a lot of wealth in and around the city. But nevertheless, I think overall, it just goes back to the history of it, working class, I think. And I think that's generally typical of the North anyway. Where I'm from, Bolton, you've got a lot of affluent areas, a lot of really nice areas. But then, there is a large proportion of it of the working class. So I think it's in terms of like what breaks trust is, people, if you go to Liverpool, very famously, do not like the government. They don't trust the government.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's literally the government are the antichrist to them. They literally do not.
As a country, we're a bit like that, but it's extreme in Liverpool.
Yeah, it's extreme in Liverpool. It literally is. And the way that the people from Liverpool see it is, again, generally or stereotypically, is they felt left behind. They felt wronged. Some of this culture goes back to Hillsborough and the scandal around there and the government's incompetence.
Hillsborough's in Liverpool, was it?
So Hillsborough was in Sheffield.
Right.
That's where I think 99 supporters were crushed. And what happened was there was this cover-up led by the police, underpinned by the government. And I think there's this general distrust.
Because it's only recently been put right, hasn't it? In terms of an apology and all of this.
Yeah. That's many, many moons ago. That's like in the late 80s. So there's a general distrust for the government, I think.
I think you should distrust the government. Yeah. I'm sorry to say. It's how I've been brought up. Yeah. Don't trust the government. Yeah. I don't think the government are evil. Yeah. I just think they're rubbish at getting it right. Yeah. And I think we all need to build a moat. Yeah. Part of being a businessman like you, an entrepreneur, that's how I've been brought up. It's like, and how my dad's brought me up. It's like, build your moat. Yeah. Fuck them. Yeah. Get on and build something strong, because you can never predict what they're going to do. That's it.
I think being independent, self-reliant, that sort of thing. I think the people from the Northwest generally trusting of one another.
Is there anger? Only because I was in this meeting with all these heavy London people, and they're saying how damaging actually the Northern Powerhouse had been to London, how much it had pitted London against the rest of the country, which is this sort of, and when they said it, I was like, God, I can really see that it's doubling down on what people felt anyway. Yeah.
I don't think people are losing sleep over that. I think because Manchester's booming, I think we're very much on our own thinking there's a lot of great things. There's a lot of great energy in the city and around it. Everybody's sort of like very buoyant about.
Is there lots of VCs now? Lots of investment.
A lot of VCs. Like tremendous amount of investment. Like
it's huge. Incredible wealth, actually. You, and it's been there, as you say, for generations now. It's like the Industrial Revolution changed this thing where suddenly the richest people in the country from Manchester. Yeah. And they were suddenly, that was the whole, where there's brass and the whole sort of nouveau riche and the whole people suddenly turning up with a load of money. And it was like, wow, but they were like driving this industrial heartland. I mean, there were moments, I forget the history, where Manchester was, the biggest, richest city in the country and stuff like this,
I forget how many there are, but there's a fair few that spring to mind as to how many billionaires are from or reside in and around Manchester. So I think it's testament to what it has, the area as a whole. And like I said, there's a lot of good energy around the city. There's a lot of good activity going on. I don't think people, like I said, lose any sleep over being forgotten about anymore. I think it's kind of like that's long gone.
Let's talk about your industry a bit, which is like ours, legal industry and stuff like this. Sometimes with clients, I even say it, you do pay a premium in London. I mean, it's a talent pool without a doubt. I mean, there's some of the sharpest legal and accounting minds in the country reside, in London without a doubt. But there's an awful lot of things where there's a firm, Ross, who's from just outside of Manchester, one of the towns, Wakefield, I think it was. Yeah. But anyway, the firm he trained at, and we do work with them sometimes. But there's a lot to be said for going for your advice up there, because what's the difference, isn't it? Yeah. Especially with Zoom now.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly, yeah.
Do you need to be in their offices? You're trying to get some legal advice. Yeah. Well, I don't know how different the hourly rates are, but they're going to be a bit better.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. I think so. My experience of that is this. I think it's very much a connected country now because of technology. So what you'll find is, depending on a business person's or business's requirements or needs, it might be, if there's a cross-border, if there's a specialist in a particular type of dispute or whatever it might be, there might be a need for a Northwest-based company requiring legal advice from a London-based firm. But I think there's a lot of great law firms and professional services firms in and around the area that most needs can be met by staying somewhat local.
It's almost unusual, to be fair, that you wouldn't be able to get the right advice in Manchester. And that's not necessarily saying you have to go to London, but there will be some specialist areas that will only be a few people who know their onions. and they might be in Hong Kong and London or whatever.
I think it's not quite like the medical industry where, you've got Harley Street, or for instance, my dad had prostate cancer 2.5 years ago. And when he got diagnosed, he was literally told, like everybody else, this is your treatment, chemo, radio. This is the complications that you might suffer. He was like, yeah, fuck that. I'm not doing that. So what he did, he went on this mission to find an alternative. That alternative was like a laser knife surgery. And the only guy that could do it was a guy based here.
Yeah.
I've had another requirement for something similar recently. And again, the person is based here. So I think sometimes, or particular the medical industry, you do find the top experts are based here. Whereas I feel like whether it be technology or an equal good enough equivalent, you can find that expertise in the Northwest, in Manchester, for example.
Yeah.
But, some people, I know a guy that had a dispute not so long ago, and I think because he wanted to frighten the life out of the opposition, as it were, he wanted to use a big, bad London law firm because he wanted that sort of reputation to carry some additional weight. Now, the person handling it wasn't necessarily any better or couldn't do the same or equivalent as what the counterparty in Manchester could do. Because at the end of the day, I know this through the platform that I've built and just obviously running my law firm. The law is the law. Nobody monopolizes the law. It is what it is. The difference is the application of it, interpretation of it, and the experience in working the law. That's what separates out other lawyers and other law firms, basically. And then beside that, like I said, you've got the brand reputation, the history of the firm. My firm's been going 6 years, not 150 years. There's a lot to be said for working with a law firm that's been going 150 years. The track record, the history, the reputation, the experience, the knowledge, and so on and so forth. Likewise, if you get a small business like we tend to work with, they don't have the budget. And even if they did, a lot of our clients wouldn't want to spend it on London law firm rates.
So before we crack on with the show, please consider subscribing to this wonderful channel and to our mailing list at withoutbs.com. You get free weekly classes from the best minds in business and free downloadable resources that strip away the jargon and give you the real world lessons you don't get at business school. Thank you. There's a couple of areas to dig in here more, I think, and talk more about some of your thoughts on what matters in law is important. I mean, let's start with a basic one, which I think an interesting question. Someone was asking me the other day about accountancy firms. How do you pick a good accountancy firm? And people were waffling on various things on this LinkedIn. And I was like, look, number one, look for these qualifications people were not even understanding. So you used to have the word chartered. We still do. We're chartered accountants, which means we're regulated by an institute. If you're not aware of this, anyone can call themselves an accountant. Only a regulated accountant by an institute is a chartered accountant. Second point I'd make to you is that there's the ACA, there's the ACCA. They're similar, slightly different, but those are the sort of premier accounting qualifications. There's also SEMA. But then if you're getting tax advice, you want to really look for a chartered tax advisor who might be a lawyer, might be an accountant, could be just a tax advisor. And that's a CTA, that's a premium. And the other thing alluding to what you're saying is, for me, it's not so much how old the firm is, but you want to look down the team profile of people, and you don't want to see a lot of customer success people, marketing people. You want to see a lot of qualifications. I want to see some gray hair too. You don't want everyone who's 22. Do you know what I mean? I want to see a range of things, but this is just me thinking as like an accounting business, someone asking this question. When you think you've got to get good legal advice, it's much less clear in a way in law because some people have an LLB, which means you did it at university, doesn't it? It's not like, it's less like you can say, oh, it's an ACA. The qualifications are less clear. So then it's, and what, again, you're alluding to, which I want you to talk about more, is like, it's about being a commercial lawyer. It's about really understanding business. What if you're trying to find a lawyer, what do you think you're trying to look for? So
I'll answer the first bit. I think legal qualifications are much more narrow than accountancy qualifications in terms of what is required in the pathway to becoming qualified. So most people's journey is they'll do a law degree, then they'll go and do, usually part funded by the firm, the LPC. which is usually 12 months. And then once they've done the LPC, they then look to get a training contract. And then what the training contract does, as you'll probably know, is that real life lived experience working across several different seats, employment, commercial, and so on and so forth. And once they've done that and they've met all of the criteria, they can then become qualified.
They can hold themselves out as a solicitor, but they don't get anything on the end of their name, is my understanding. Initials. You just become a solicitor who can practice independently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that in itself is just a badge. You have to get obviously regulated. So I think it's much more narrow in comparison to accountancy qualifications. So the only other anomaly to that is a different path to becoming a solicitor called a chartered legal exec. So what you have is a different roadmap for that. I think it's called SILEX. So it's much more vocational based. So for people that either are not necessarily academic or didn't want to go to uni, it offers people a pathway to becoming qualified outside of doing a degree than LPC, because the LPC, I know this for a fact, 'cause I've paid for people to do it. I think it was like $9,000. It's outside of most people's budget, because a lot of the time, they have to pay for it themselves. So what they did is they introduced this thing called is it SQL or SQS?
Yeah. It's just written down. It's SQL or something, the exams, yeah.
So again, that's to encourage people that they can start as an apprentice, work the way through.
They can start working in the law firm and do the exams like an accountant trains. We start as an accountant and we do a training contract.
Yeah, and that was just designed to open it up to encourage a lot more people to enter the sector, because there's been a declining number of people wanting to join the legal sector. And I think a lot of it's to do with getting a training contract. It's a bit like trying to get the number 9 shirt for Man United. There's only a few number 9 shirts, but you have these thousands of people that graduate from uni every year. And, it's a dog-eat-dog world. A lot of people's aspirations are just shot to shit because, like I said, there's always so many opportunities to get these training contracts. You've got to earn your stripes. You've got to do the sweeping up on the floor, so to speak. And even then, that's not good enough. So, the different way of doing it is these different apprenticeship type ways. And what they're designed to do is encourage people, give them that sort of dream at the end. Because a lot of the time, people do these different degrees and whatnot and don't tend to reach the pinnacle of the career by qualifying a lot of the time.
You mentioned a platform you built. Explain to me where that methodology is coming from.
So, going back to the book, I was asked to do this book, and then there was a number of co-authors, and then on the back of that, I joined this community. So a real sort of career highlight and life highlight for me. On the back of it, I was invited to speak at the World Economic Forum last January about some specialist subjects that I'm involved in technology, AI and blockchain, particularly from a legal sector perspective. So it was the conversations were about the way in which those technology are being used to deliver legal services, and then from a legislation point of view, where does the law sit with these technologies? Because they move at such a fast pace, the law can't keep up with them. And I think a lot of people, and rightly so, are worried that, well, what if these technologies get out of hand? What are the safeguards? What are the measures in place to stop them from getting out of hand, basically? So on the back of that, what I've had the idea of for a while is creating a digital legal services firm. In other words, is it possible to create a law firm which is effectively run by AI and technology? And I've taken the first few steps to doing that. So the platform is called Clause Law, so CLAUSE.
Okay, like Santa Claus.
Yeah, shareholder agreements, cap table management, and governance. That's the sort of the starting point. So it's very much AI and technology driven. So people are able to generate their own shareholder agreements, whether they're the simple all the way through to complex. It offers cap table management because most people still manage them on spreadsheets, as then well in offering a governance module. So what the AI bit does, it's AI co-pilots all the way through. And I've also had built an AI legal assistant that will literally talk people through how to generate their own share agreements. But the really clever bit is if you go to ChatGPT or Claude or one of the others, because of the vast array of training data, the reason that people are told you shouldn't rely on those AIs for legal advice or other is because they can't be relied upon, and it's true, because they haven't had the specific training on the law.
It's just read everything on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So what it does is it pulls from several different sources, pulls it all together, and then makes its own version up. Whereas my platform, it's built on 8,000 shareholder agreement disputes that have been held in various different courts in England and Wales. And it's had all of the lessons and learnings of why a case was there in the first place, all of the things why the case was won and lost. And then when it comes to generating the clauses within the agreements, it's based on what that best practice is. So, a silly example, there's a really famous case where there was two brothers, they fell out, they had a dispute, they had a share agreement. So ordinarily, what the judge would do is, what does it say in the share agreement? Because they'd fallen out and there were 50-50 shareholders, it then went back to the articles. Because they'd not updated the articles in line with the shareholder agreement, it was like, well, the article says this. Yeah, no, but we don't want to rely on what it says here. We want it to rely on what it says here. Yeah, no, but you're in dispute, can't agree, so it defaults to this. So that would have been avoided if, when they were drafting the shareholder agreement, whoever had done it at the time, they'd been made aware that you ought to make sure the articles are updated in line with the shareholder agreement. So that's just a silly example. So,
but quite a common mistake. But that is the job of a lawyer, to check these things all tie up.
Exactly. But a lot of the time, they just don't. Or
they don't. So, life is life.
So my platform's built on real life cases. That's the difference, basically, than a chat GPT. So we're very much at the infancy of creating, I would say it's only good enough, the AI legal assistant that we've built, to be a legal assistant, because what hasn't developed to a greater extent enough is the thinking and reasoning part. So the reason that I mentioned before about the law, they don't have a monopoly on it, what I've programmed my platform to do is have a great understanding of the law. I have these 8,000 dispute cases, but where it falls short of a human lawyer who's got, like you say, grey hairs and 40 years in the game, is the application, the interpretation, and the experience. But that's going to come. It will come. At the speed in which these AI models are being developed, the thinking and reasoning element of them is evolving and improving all the time. So when you look at the new update coming through from ChatGPT, a lot of the time they're making improvements to the thinking and reasoning. And it's the thinking and reasoning part which in, I don't know, however many years' time, will be at the point where, when everybody says AI is going to kill us all and all that, I don't believe that, by the way, but what people are talking about there is when it's able to think for itself, when it's able to mimic and in fact actually think better than a human being would. And it's not a question if, it's a question when. And I fully believe that. And I think because of the rate in which the technology is evolving and improving, I think it's inevitable that professional services is going to become under pressure from an advisory point of view. Now, you've obviously got that bit, and I'm very much a face-to-face person, very much human interaction. I don't ever want to lose that. But whether we like it or not, I don't know if the countries is the same, but 100% it's this in legal services. People will use ChatGPT for legal stuff. So you may as well, so I've taken the view, I may as well accept it, and I may as well
get on the bus,
pivot and get on the bus with it.
Yeah.
And create, if you're going to use ChatGPT or AI for your legal stuff, well, let me be the legal stuff then, because at least you'll know it's trained on the law, not sort of like somewhat of an experience of it, pulled together from 10 different sources and then made my own version of it, which is what it currently does.
Is it a subscription model?
It's a subscription model, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think advisory, particularly, I think law, I mean, ultimately, look, ChatGPT is a word thing, isn't it? Yeah. It can come up with words. It's sort of a bit of a lawyer in terms of it's like it can produce stuff, isn't it? And yeah, the contracts might not be perfect, but how often does that really matter if they're close to perfect or if they're close enough? You know?
Just to be clear, So my platform, you're speaking to a person.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's not word, it's a person.
Okay.
So, and my first experience of that was, it's actually the best salesperson you've ever met. It's an AI salesperson. It's unbelievable.
When you mean it's a literal physical person with blood in them?
No.
Okay.
So basically, you program your AI bot, and it will make outbound sales calls. You programmed it to be whatever it is you want to sell, and I would say 9 times out of 10, it can sell better than most salespeople. Put it this way, I got rid of all my salespeople.
Phone calls, live phone calls?
Yeah, I got rid of all my salespeople and introduced this thing.
Wow.
And then it was on the back of that then, when I've been building out my platform, I built out this live avatar. So you communicate with an avatar, which has been trained and programmed on a very narrow thing at the minute. Because like I say, it's shareholder agreements and governance and shareholder management for now. The idea is to get traction with it. And if and when I do, the plan would then be to roll it out to other legal services. This is very much like a pilot for other legal services. You know, this is like the hero product for now. But even just you keeping it as this, I think there's a market for it. So this is the way I think it's going. And interestingly enough, just on this, which is, I'm not sure whether it'll frighten you or not. What made me think I was onto something with this, when I was at the World Economic Forum, there's a lot of side events. And I went to one of them, and there was this guy who developed this platform for AI agents, basically. And his side job, he was working the Doge department directly under Trump, right? And he literally stood on the stage and he went, I believe that AI agents will have their own rights. So I was like, what? Like human rights? He was like human rights. I was like, whoa. And basically, the reason that I thought he was onto something is this. He said, it'll have its own social security number. And I said, so why is that then? And he said, because when it generates revenue, whose revenue is it, mine or the AI agents?
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, now that makes fucking sense. Because currently, how clever, if he's using these AI agents to install them to different businesses and charge a fortune for doing it, and it's generating the revenue, it's not me, pal. I'm not earning it.
And it's almost that next stage, isn't it? There's the utopia. There's a very disruptive stage, but the hope is you get to the utopia where you've got, robots doing your laundry, but also you've got all, things farming the farms. It's like but then in services, there's all these agents and it's all doing it for us, generating revenue that it can then contribute tax to society to then pay us and help us.
It. So because of the technology and automation I've introduced to my firm, I've cut my headcount by 50%.
Wow.
We've improved processes, improved speed, improved deliverability. Now, it was sad to see those people go, and they went with a heavy heart, but I see the way in which it's going. When you've got the likes of Microsoft making 30,000 redundancies.
The sad question for society is, what are those people going to go do now? But the answer might be, well, become a plumber, because they're not going to crack that for a while.
It. So bearing in mind I'm swimming in one direction with my AI product, I'm also swimming in a different one, which is why I mentioned about I've taken a stake in a vegetation management business, because AI won't replace those guys in trees chopping trees down.
Oh, is that what vegetation management? Yeah. That's tree surgeons.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And like I said,
eventually robots get there, isn't it? But you take some of these, the human hand and the incredibly dexterous nature of this is that for a long time, you might be able to farm a field with an automated thing, but fixing a plum or cutting down a specific bit of tree,
I think it's an interesting thing what's going to happen to unis, because I think unis are redundant right now.
They've been redundant for a long time. No one's wanted to admit it because they've become a sort of like, the system didn't move, did it? It's like you couldn't become a lawyer or an accountant unless you'd gone to uni. I mean, what nonsense, but that's slowly catching up now.
Yeah,
I can't think, other than to have fun and take lots of drugs, I can't think of one good reason to go to university these days.
I think the courses will change to be in line with the way that AI is going to disrupt it. It's not going to happen just, tomorrow, but I think it's going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years, definitely.
If I'm really honest about it, I think there was only a few people went to university, so it became a sort of privileged thing. I think the British people are obsessed with fairness, and I think actually it's a real problem for us as a culture, because part of the race, why part of the reason the country's not doing so well is we're so obsessed with fairness and everyone having equal opportunity. It doesn't take into self-determination, parents who've absolutely broken their backs to give their children better opportunities. It takes all of that away. It's the socialism versus sort of, entrepreneurialism, capitalism argument. There's all that discomfort too, that there's cleverer people and the stupider people, and we want everyone to do the same. And it's like, someone put it so well to me. They were saying, because I was saying, well, should you stream people and should it be fair? And they said, listen, if you want any exceptionalism in this country, and I mean exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally educated people who are world-class creating businesses that compete on a global level, which, by the way, he pointed out, we've been bloody good at in this country for a long time. Whether you like private school and grammar schools or not, whether you like it or not, we had a system where effectively people say, oh, well, that's all about money. It's like, well, the people who make money are often the people who are a bit cleverer. I mean, these are all really uncomfortable truths. But if you want some people in the country who are absolute top of the fucking game, like unbelievable people, then you need to allow this to happen. But if you want everything fair, you have a nation of average people, and and the average means bottom of the pile. It means disaster.
Do you know what, Andy? I totally agree. Life isn't fair. It isn't fair. What I say to my children, because they're all different, one's 12, one's 9, one's 5, and they've got a new one at 6 months. And I'll tell him the same, is there's more than one way. And all 3 children are very different. And I can already see a path in front of them will be different. Yeah. And I'm glad. And what I'm very conscious of doing is, it's okay to be different. It's okay to do it your way. Don't feel pressured into, I must do this and I must do that. There's more than one way to succeed. And, one of my quotes in my book, I know I keep plugging it, is it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. And, I'm a testament to that in my life. I think we spoke about this last time I was here. I took a lot of wrong turns. In fact, I took that many wrong turns, going around in circles for quite a few years. But I've succeeded nevertheless, and I did it my way, did it differently. And even now, I've got a good business. I could have continued on as I have been, but I'm going, actually, I'm putting the brakes on. I feel like the landscape is changing and will change significantly in the coming years. And I want to try and be on that crest of a wave with it. Hence the reason why I'm pivoting to it.
You didn't fit very well in the system of saying, you will, but that's because you're innovative and creative and these aspects.
Yeah.
And there's an aspects at which we try and sort of take an academic route to everybody.
Yeah.
I saw Lionel Richie talking about this on social media, but he was making a good point that if you've got a creative child like you were, academic stuff isn't so important. They're going to be BC student.
Yeah.
Give them space. Let them be creative. Let them be innovative.
Yeah.
That's their nature.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that all your kids being different, you've got to give them space to find their way, isn't it? And we just don't know what the world looks like.
Just encourage them.
Yeah, give them love.
Belief, and give them that belief. I was very blessed by my parents. They gave me a lot of things, and one of the things that I value the most and has had the greatest impact is the self-belief. That belief that as long as I put my head down, didn't just expect it to happen, focus, you can achieve almost most things. And I think most people live with a ceiling, what they think, why don't you do that? I can't do that. I not from where I'm from. It's just bullshit. I think a lot of people just limit the beliefs and therefore they stay stuck in a life that they probably preferred they didn't have. But I was blessed by an unrelenting self-belief that no matter what it was, and my 2 brothers are the same, we put our minds to, we can achieve it. So, and that's something that I'm trying to, or I will pass on to my children as well.
For a business now, what do you feel? You've accepted that AI is playing a huge part to play in people's, how they get advice and things now. If you're an SME, what are the legal blind spots? When do you think you really do need a lawyer?
So let's have it right. Most people only engage with a lawyer when they've got a problem. So what we try and do is prevention rather than cure, because it's often cheaper and less painful and takes less time. But that's an education process. So where most SMEs get it wrong is, you can look at a business that's been going 30 years, because one of the businesses that we're looking at the minute, me and my business partner, is a 50-year-old niche plastic manufacturing business. And it's amazing their history and how they've got going in. And it's amazing like what their business looks like in 2026. It's just very much a lifestyle business. But whether they've been going 50 years or 5 years, it's often the same, which is they get going, they trade, and then the governance and documents and contracts and agreements are often either not there at all or 20 odd years old. And then a problem arises and it's like, well, where's this? So we don't have one. Or when they do have one, it's not been updated for 20 years. So a lot of issues, not necessarily just disputes, but issues running a business in general, all of the sort of boring stuff could have been avoided if they had the right governance in place, whether that be meetings, contracts, agreements, shareholder agreements, whatever else. So yeah, I think outside of generating sales and revenue, I think a lot of businesses fall short on having the other stuff in place.
Particularly if they're starting to think they're going to sell, they want to do something, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you think, well, I'd love to sell this business in 2 years' time. Well, frankly, you should probably start getting your shit in order because it will take you a while.
Yeah.
You could do it in a few months if you had to, and maybe it'll only take you 6 months. But by the time you found a lawyer who you like and started to try and find some agreement and Christmas happened, 2 years is probably not an unreasonable time period.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Exactly it. So yeah, that's where we see a lot of businesses falling short. We've got a client based in the Lake District, and they produce dog food, pet food. So classic sort of thing, right? So they don't ship; they have a distributor, right? Okay, what does your complaints look like? Oh yeah, we get loads. Why? Because
distributors shit.
Yeah. Well, when was the last time you visited the factory? Oh, we've not. What do you mean? What is the agreement you've got in place that should there be a complaint and therefore a refund, that they're responsible, not for you? We don't have one.
Yeah, basic.
So it's like, well, how do you know that they're storing it at the right temperature? We don't. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's almost like when everything's good and the money's turning up, people don't care, do they?
So what happens if a dog has some of your pet food that they've bought from your website and there's a serious illness with the dog? Who pays the compensation if there's a claim? You.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean. Like, there's a lot of great businesses out there. They're great at the whatever it is they trade, good at generating revenue. But whether it's having a contract in place for something like that, or getting themselves ready for sale at some point in the future, or whatever, everything in between, that's where we see a lot of businesses going wrong or coming unstuck at some point. So it's just about education, isn't it? And unfortunately, people don't want to spend the money on legal services. They see it as an unnecessary thing. And that's where my platform hopefully bridges that gap between making it affordable and actually offering real value.
Well, even there, the conversation you just had with that client is very commercial. It's like, well, how does this chain work? And it's not like a lawyer, well, I'm here and you need to instruct me. I mean, we were just trying to do something the other day when my dog has come to life, probably talking about pet food. But anyway, he's digging for pet food. But, we had this meeting with this. It's because it's on a technical issue and we want to go to a specialist firm. And then you get the email saying, well, if you could give us the absolute line of your instruction and my dad just forwarded it to me saying chocolate far guards. And I was just like, yeah, totally. It's like, oh, you need us to give you an absolute instruction of where the edge is. It's like, fuck that. You heard what we had to say. You think it through. Yeah. You know what I mean? All that's going to happen is I'm going to give you this scope of instruction for a lawyer and you're just going to write me a load of bullshit that I'm like, that's not like, can I put it this way? Like when you deal, there's a chap in our business called Jeffrey and he's unbelievable, but and he's a former very experienced litigator, but there's many other great lawyers in this business and I'm sure in yours, Adam. So it's not that, but Jeffrey's just a really old school lawyer, he's an old guy, but brilliant. And, when you have a good experience as a lawyer, it's an amazing experience. It's amazing when you ask advice from someone who's insightful, who gets it, who can think through and really point out stuff. And you're like, it's better than AI. It gives you back this, like, that's why, lawyers. And I think, unfortunately, there's been a lot of, whether it's through disclaimers or something, but there's a lot of law that can be just, I don't know, just like, you're not helping me with my business. Help me with my business. You think through the problems. You think what's missing.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, well, have you thought about how does that work? And have you gone, great question. Have you gone to the factory? It's a very commercial question.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is it. This is why we're different to most law firms, because they don't think in that commercial entrepreneurial way. And that's what we sell ourselves on, exactly what you've just highlighted there. But I've got a counter argument to the point that you just said about the guy with lots of experience. So, because we've done this with our own legal assistant, imagine this, because this is what I've done, is let's just say I was able to extract all of that guy's knowledge through fact-find questions, cases worked, and all that sort of thing, and put it into a file, because that's effectively what you're doing. You're downloading that data. And I've done the exact same thing with my guys in the office and actually myself, because I want to test this on myself at some point later this year, where I download my knowledge, my experience, my ideas, create a brain that the team can then engage with as if it was me. Because that's effectively what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, on a trippy level, a client who's been way ahead in AI. When my sister got sick and passed, sadly, but when she was sick, he said to me, he said, it costs you a fortune right now, but by the way, it's not long away. You give me all her WhatsApp, all her emails, everything, I can create her.
Yeah.
And then he was blowing my mind. He said, you can get an actor about her size, could put some glasses on, and then it could be her.
Well, you can even do that now. So what you can do is there's a lot of platforms where you can literally upload a picture, upload a video, and it will create an avatar based on you, me, whoever it might be. It's already there.
Mind blowing.
Just before we jump into this, if you don't mind me asking you one question.
Yeah,
so
please.
What's your take on an AI and the impact or not it will have on your business specifically, and how you might use it or not be afraid of it or don't think it will impact?
I think it's such a huge question for us professionals at the moment. When I look at our business as a whole, I realize, because a lot of it's accounting, a lot of it is compliance, and compliance at the moment, because you need to be regulated or you need to do your tax returns, or then there's an aspect of which a lot of that carries on. Yeah, you can have AI agents who will use it and stuff.
Yeah.
Also, the second bit that accountancy maybe has a bit more is, but do you really want to, these are my defenses before I go the other direction. It's like, do I really want to talk about my tax with a bot that's connected to the government that's filing my returns? Because it's all going to be out there, Or do I want to go see my accountant and say, listen, I've got this van round the back. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, do I have to declare that? What's the deal on that? John gave me a bit of cash in hand.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm being silly, but it's almost like can you really talk honestly like that? And I think what's changing for us in profession, you're actually well positioned in that, is that the technical back office people, they're more in jeopardy because the AI is going to be really fucking good at. But the people who are really great communicators, who build really good relationships, entrepreneurs still need a human to talk to. Yeah. But they're going to be a human armed with AI. And the other thing, and you're innovative, so you'll be doing the same. For me, like you're asking the question to me, I just want to keep talking about it, because as long as we're all talking and we're experimenting with it constantly, then hopefully we can be a little bit ahead. Adam, thank you for your great thought and making the journey down, true friend of the show. And, I should say, welcome back to the podcast. I really launched into it at the beginning, but anyway. So look, let's do a little quiz, business or bullshit. Always a bit of fun to end on, yeah? And let's ask ourselves some of these things. So we're going to name a few items. You need to tell us whether you think they're business or bullshit. Have we got a paddle? Where's the paddle? So here we go. You remember how it works. You're going to hold the paddle up nice and clear. I'm going to ask you something. So let's start amusingly with London law firms. Business or bullshit?
Business.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah,
do you really feel that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I'm straightforward. There's no bullshit here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see there's a place for them. Yes, so definitely.
Yeah. I guess ultimately, a major city with like heavy law, you need it sometimes, don't you?
Well, exactly. If you look at the huge businesses, Barclays and whoever else, they're going to want to deal with the big law firms. It just makes perfect sense to me.
And a lot of the money is the American firms use London as a place to sort of work out of.
Yeah.
So this says mediation first. I read meditation for a bit. Mediation first.
Business. Yeah. I think the way that the courts are going, they basically insist on, have you tried to sort it out amicably or not? They don't want to hear it unless you have.
Does it work, mediation? Not really. I mean, in theory, it does. I've only experienced mediation a few times in my career with clients, and you have one person in one room.
Yeah.
I always thought, you have someone sitting down, a bit of a Judge Judy ball breaker, saying, right, enough of this shit, lads.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Or ladies. But actually, don't you sit in different rooms and then you have sort of, go between the rooms and this party thinks this or something, I
think my sort of like overall experience with this is principles cost money. And I always say this to people. And a lot of the time you
principles cost money. What an interesting phrase.
Because people will pursue their principles no matter the cost, despite commercial advice, logic, rationale. It's just like, well, he put a hedge on my boundary. Yeah, no, but like, just take it out or give him £50. No, I'm not having it. It's just ridiculous a lot of the time. And
that's a great example because that's territory.
Yeah.
And we're so hardwired to get very angry about territory. There was a terrible dispute with one of my, he lives a few doors away, but this neighbor of mine, he went absolutely mental. Now, to be fair, he'd lost a child, so he was in a really bad mental space.
Yeah.
But he was absolute war with this neighbor, and he got me over and he wanted me as a witness. And I was ready for this big thing. He took me outside and he said, look at it. And basically the guy had built this wall, and he'd gone like that, like at times up to 7 millimeters over their boundary line. And I was just like, what? Let it go, man. Like, who cares? And he's like, but he's taken some of our land. And I'm like, yeah, but what the fuck are we going to do about it? And who cares about 7 millimeters? My wife might on the wrong night, but it's like, really, who gives a shit? Anyway, I'm a huge fan of this question. Legalizing cannabis. Bullshit. Oh, I like that. Why?
I just feel like I know a lot of people at every spectrum, deal it, take it, grow it. A lot of bearing in mind, just life experience and the people that I've come across and the environments that I've been in, I just feel like even at the lower end of the scale with weed, it never ends well. And I feel like a lot of, so from a medical perspective, almost everybody that I've ever met and know that have smoked weed either habitually or occasionally, the mental impact is always great. So for instance, I know people that have got schizophrenic on the back of it. I know people that have diminished any extent of their memories in terms of short-term and long-term memory. So I feel like it's known for being less of a drug in comparison to cocaine and all that sort of stuff.
Or even alcohol, possibly.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think it's any less in terms of a health impact. The best analogy I can give you is vaping. Right?
You mean tobacco vaping?
Yeah. Vaping is not the same as smoking. But what you'll find is people that vape are like...
Yeah.
So, and then versus somebody who smokes, that might go out every 20 to 30 minutes. Well, that's very different. Somebody going... And then the health impact is starting to become clear now as these youngsters who've been on it since they were 15, collapsed lungs, all this sort of shit. And I see it in the same way with weed, because it's less worse than coke, for example. Well, I can just do it. I'll just do it at home. I'll just do it all the time, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like because of that acceptance, people tend to do it more. Because they tend to do it more, the health impact is greater. This is where the sort of robust mental state has come from in terms of release. It's just sort of like processing. That's basically what I do. It's kind of like, it hasn't always been like that. I've had...
Sit with your discomfort, you're meaning, is it? Be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I was saying to Dee earlier, what a decade 2025 was. It was one of the worst years I've had in many, many years. I had a cancer scare, new baby, challenges with the business, challenges with the house I'm building, challenges in relationship, everything that a year could throw at me to sort of put me on my backside, it felt like I had everything happen at once. So, and what did I do for release? Because of all the stuff I was dealing with, I couldn't go for a run, I couldn't go for a bike ride, I couldn't go to the gym, I didn't drink, I didn't necessarily comfort eat. The only thing I could do, and it's something that I've developed over years, is just process it, sit with it, and just grind through it. And I meant to mention this to you actually. Do you know what was really interesting? I was trying to find the quote. So at the very end of this podcast that I did last time, we spoke about resilience, right? And I said, and I don't know if I jinxed myself, I think it's important that you go through pain and suffering because it sharpened the tools. What I didn't realize was what was ahead of me in 2025, because to say that it sharpened the tools is an understatement. I've been through the fucking mill. Literally, it's been a very, very hard year.
Life is hard.
Yeah, it is.
This great point that, I'm slightly stealing it off my old man, but it's one of the problems in the country is people are starting this position that life should be easy and everyone should be, why haven't I got this? And no, you should start from the position that life is fucking hard, and you'll have pain and suffering, you'll have good times, you have bad times, but it is hard and it will continue to be hard, and work hard and grind through it, and don't expect it all to be easy peasy.
Stress is a privilege in a way, because we don't have to do what we do, it's a choice. And the reason that we do it is a love of the profession, the lifestyle it gives, the ambition, the drive, and all that sort of good stuff. We don't have to do it, but we do it because of those reasons and others. But what comes with the territory is the stress and pressure that goes with it. That's part and parcel of it, isn't it?
Great answer. Being professional, not getting emotional. Being professional, not getting emotional. Bullshit. Is it okay to be emotional?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just circle back on something we spoke about before regarding the AI conversation. So the way I see the AI is not necessarily a replacement of professional advisors, but very much a tool. I think at the bottom end, it will replace. At the top end, I think it'll be a tool. I think people will still want that human interaction, that human connection, that human advisory. So going back to this question, we don't profess to be the most professional. It's not my brand that I've built. I've spent 6 years building a brand that is normal, down to earth, that you can relate to. It isn't a robot. It isn't a pinstripe suit. It's just a person like you. And we're there to support our clients, the people at the end of the day. And just like we just said, people get emotional. Running a business is hard. Life is hard. And I think the way in which certainly we go about building relationships with our clients is, look, you can count on us. You can lean on us. We're just like you. And I think it's good to show emotion, because I think that's how you build connection, real connection anyway.
Final question. The idea that you have to hit rock bottom, business or bullshit?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah,
totally agree.
Yeah, totally agree. I've got a quote in my book about exactly that.
At the lowest point, you can see the stars, isn't it? Adam, thank you so much for coming to do this today. Where can people find you? Look up Adam Pope, I guess.
Yeah, Adam Pope.
Spencer Churchill.
Yeah, that's it. Adam Pope, Spencer Churchill, yeah.
Tell us the name of this book and the name again.
So this book's called How to Survive and Thrive. And I co-authored a chapter along with other amazing co-authors in conjunction with a guy called Joe Foster. He was one of the original founders of Reebok, the apparel manufacturer.
Is Reebok still going?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a big thing from the 80s and 90s, but I'm a bit looking for, I don't know, boring shoes these days or something. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Absolute gem. This has been this week's episode of Business Without BS. Join us again soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.